So that's the reason that I didn't appeal the decision, because I had asked for a second for consideration after they had indicated that we were going to be cited. I emailed them back and explained the situation. And again, I was told, no, that you will still be cited and this will go to the board for consideration. And so that was another reason why I didn't appeal the decision.
Okay, board members, any questions or additional comments? Okay, with that then, the floor will be open for a motion regarding the cited recommendation.
I'll move we approve the recommendation for citation.
There's a motion by Mr. Bragg to approve the citation. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Dr. Arnold. Any questions or comments? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against?
I'll say aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a PLSB case. Ms. James to come to present.
Good morning. Whitney James with the department. The next item is the consideration of the recommendation of the PLSB recommendation for case number 25050, Joanna Blocker. This is a case that went to an evidentiary hearing. The recommendation from the ethics subcommittee was upheld, and the educator has requested a review hearing. Just a reminder of the procedures. Anyone who is not an attorney who will be speaking today needs to be sworn in, and each party will have 10 minutes to make oral arguments, starting with the educator. The educator is not present today. However, her attorney, Caitlin Capel, is present to speak on her behalf.
Thank you, Ms. James. So at this point, no one needs to be sworn in. Is that correct?
I don't believe there's anyone here today that needs to be sworn in since the educator is not present.
Okay, so we'll
Thank you.
start with the educators speaking. You have 10 minutes. And introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. As you heard, my name is Caitlin Capel, and I represent Ms. Blocker, a dedicated educator with 25 years of experience whose career is now at issue. We're here today because the evidentiary hearing led to the recommendation that this board revoke Ms. Blocker's teaching license based on the allegations of a violation of ethics. However, we respectfully urge this board to deny that request. Let me be clear. It is not Ms. Blocker's position to condone any misconduct, nor does she take these concerns lightly. However, revocation is the most extreme sanction available to this board, and it is meant to be reserved for cases that where the educator poses an extreme risk to children's safety, to students' safety, where they would be considered an ongoing threat to them. But that is not what we have here. Now, the core allegation here is that Ms. Blocker misrepresented holding a PhD. The only evidence of this alleged misrepresentation is a single email sent in 2019 in which she casually referenced and then the PhD. No diploma was submitted, no false documentation was produced, and importantly, no evidence shows that she represented herself as Dr. Blocker in any official capacity. In fact, Ms. Blocker followed the protocol each year by submitting sealed official transcripts to Human Resources at her school, as required by the Arch Ford Handbook. These transcripts were used to verify contracts, and they were used to be reviewed regularly by HR, and those were used regularly without issue for over 16 years. The subcommittee also asserted that there was a salary increase based on the PhD credential. Yet no salary schedule exists for her position linked to that degree. Rather, her compensation reflected the additional responsibilities she had, serving in a dual role, and she was also serving as a brain injury specialist. There was no evidence presented to establish any undue financial gain resulting from credential misrepresentation. As to claims of professional harm or district impact, again, no evidence was submitted. No students, administrators, or districts testified to any negative consequences. This alone calls into question whether any ethical violation, assuming one occurred, had a widespread impact that the Ethics Committee suggested that it had. Finally, let's address the other allegations, such as appearing as doctor in external documents or seminars based on other materials that were created by third parties. There's no evidence Ms. Blocker directed or encouraged doctor to be used or that title to be used. Essentially, this case was built on inference, not evidence. To revoke a license on the basis of one ambiguous email without proof of intent to harm or deception does nothing but deprive children of a dedicated teacher. And I'd like to address proportionality. Even if the alleged misconduct occurred, the appropriate response should match the gravity and the context of the offense. In this case, Ms. Blocker is facing permanent revocation, a career-ending punishment, which would not be proportionate to this conduct. According to the board's own sanctioning guidelines, there are only 2 other examples that are punishable by revocation, and those offenses are particularly egregious, including sexual abuse towards children. And that's not what we're talking about here. This isn't predatory action. This was just an error in judgment, if any. The misconduct alleged is not one that would be repeated. It's not one that can't be deterred by other sanctions. There's no pattern of misconduct. There's no reoccurrence. And there's no indication that the students were ever endangered. In conclusion, we would ask this board to exercise its discretion, consider what sanction would be appropriate given this alleged misconduct. Revocation should be the last resort and only when it's necessary and just. We urge the court to deny the commission's recommendation based on the evidentiary hearing, to deny revoking Ms. Blocker's license and allow her the opportunity to continue serving her students as she's done for 25 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whitney James with the department again. Just to respond to a couple of the educators' attorneys' comments. Ms. Blocker admitted to our investigator and at the evidentiary hearing that she was dishonest about her credentials and said she had a PhD. This wasn't merely a casual mention in an email. There was also testimony from the co-op director, or from a co-op employee, that the salary was only increased because she was then on the PhD pay schedule. There was also no evidence at the hearing that each year Ms. Blocker submitted her transcripts to the co-op. As far as I know, she only submitted them one time. Don't know how that got missed, but they got filed away. The educator in this case worked at Archford Co-op for 16 years. She's been in education for 25 years. She has a bachelor's degree and a master's. It's undisputed that she does not hold a doctorate degree. However, because of a reduction in force that happened many years ago, in order to keep her job, she was dishonest with the co-op and conveyed to the co-op in writing that she did have a doctorate, thus increasing the number of points that she had so that she could survive the reduction in force. This meant she was able to remain employed. She never came to them at any point and said, that was, I was dishonest about that. She continued to accept the salary year after year after year. Another employee at the time at that initial RIF who did legitimately have the qualifications was laid off. Ms. Blocker's salary was increased, like I said, to the PhD pay scale. She accepted approximately $60,000 from the co-op over the years following her dishonest statement. At the evidentiary hearing, when she was specifically asked, do you think you need to repay that? She said no. And this all came about, and this was all discovered at the co-op when she was actually asking to receive more money from a stipend. Like I said, she admitted at the evidentiary hearing that she was dishonest. She said she didn't need to reimburse the co-op. The hearing subcommittee heard Ms. Blocker's testimony in person. She's not here today, but the hearing subcommittee heard her testimony and unanimously upheld the recommendation of the ethics hearing subcommittee that her license should be revoked and that she should pay a $500 fine. Regarding standard 2, she was clearly unethical and unprofessional. She was dishonest. She also signed documents that stated Joanna Blocker, PhD. So this, again, was not a one-time thing. At the hearing, she took me by surprise when she said that someone had forged her signature on those documents. And the ethics hearing subcommittee did not find that statement to be credible. They were able to look at other documents she had signed, and they did not believe that to be true. They stated in their rationale that she falsified reports. Regarding Standard 3, she failed to honestly report her credentials. Regarding Standard 4, she accepted public funds for a doctorate that she knew she did not have. Now, while this by itself may not show in the sanctioning matrix that revocation is proper, there are so many aggravating factors in this case. And in the past, you all have revoked licenses when people have been dishonest about their credentials. So this would be consistent. She has also said via her attorney in writing twice that she has never held herself out to have a doctorate to the Archford Co-op, and this is blatantly untrue. So it's our position that she's also lied to the PLSB. The appropriate sanction, or the only appropriate sanction, is the permanent revocation of license and the $500 fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Now we open the floor up for questions, both of Ms. James or of usually the educator or the attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to start to my left. Questions? Ms. Keener.
I was wondering, in the time that she worked at Archford, how many, I guess, what's the correct term? The evaluations that were given, let me get the correct term, hang on just a second, it slipped my mind. How many psychological specialized evaluation reports was she responsible for? She was there 16 years, is that correct?
I do not have the exact number on that. In the exhibits that were in the file that we gave to you, I think we have maybe 3 or 4, and she was also listed on PD schedules as Dr. Joanna Blocker. So presumably the parents of students who were being evaluated believe that she had a doctorate degree based on her signature on those documents.
So without a doctorate, would she have been qualified to complete as an examiner these reports?
Yes, ma'am, I believe that she was, but the PhD was still listed on there.
And so with the PhD on, I think every single one of those would be an incidence of fraud to me every time she signed her name. And just to respond to Ms. Capel's assertion that she was not a risk or a threat, I think that amount of lack of integrity is a risk and a threat to the colleague that lost his job, to every family that believed that this evaluation was done by someone with credentials that they didn't have. The risk and the threat there is apparent, in my opinion.
As the newest member of the board, I just want to restate what I regard to be my inputs for this case to make sure that they're correct. It's the determination of the ethics subcommittee and the hearing transcript of those proceedings, which I've read, and then the recommendation of the PLSB, and then the attorney's statements this morning and Whitney James's rebuttal of those statements before us. So those are my 5 inputs that I've used to make my decision, which I'll voice at the appropriate time. But am I correct that that's a complete set of inputs?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're right. We don't always have the evidentiary subcommittee, and in that case, it's harder to make a decision. So we have more complete information than we.
It seems so. Thank you.
More questions, Mr. Wood?
Has she repaid any money to Archford?
No.
If the board were to uphold the recommendation and a fine, can the fine be increased beyond $500?
I believe it's up to $500, but if the co-op chooses to do something else to recoup that money, that's their decision.
Okay.
Board members, Mr. Bragg, questions?
Since Ms. Blocker is not here, can you answer why she was repeatedly asked for the doctorate certificate, why she never produced that?
Let me make sure that I'm following. Are you asking if she was requested if they requested that document?
They requested the document, the actual diploma.
My understanding is that they never requested it. Is that she provided her official sealed transcripts at the appropriate times when requested directly to HR. And whether those were reviewed or not, I think that's on the school district at that point, on HR, the person who was reviewing it, but she was never requested of that document, and she provided her sealed transcripts.
From what I read, especially with concern to the salary, that they were going to try to confirm that she had an actual certificate, a doctorate, to justify that salary.
More questions?
Since Ms. Blocker isn't here, does she understand that her silence is deemed by probably most of us as not caring about her license?
I can't speak as to what she
She
understands or
never
her
indicated to you?
thoughts.
Can you speak to where she is, or her thoughts on not, excuse me, I guess not her thoughts, but were you surprised that she was not here today?
No, I was not surprised. She had asked that we attend. She had a conflict as well, but it was also, as far as this goes, this has been a very emotional situation, and her testimony was not required. So therefore, she's sent me here to speak on her behalf.
Mr. Henderson?
I think Lee pretty much asked the question I was going to ask. I guess for me, does she really understand the nature of this offense, the seriousness of this?
Are you asking if she understands the seriousness of this?
Yes.
Yes, she understands the seriousness of this. I can't speak as to, again, her thoughts. I'm only her counsel, but what I can say is that she is very aware of this, and she would not be, she would not have fought this situation had she not believed that she was a contribution to the teaching society. So,
If I had a comment to pass along to her, I would, as you go back, depending on what this board decides, we've had people here for a lot less come and try and argue for their licenses, so.
Ms. Rollins?
Did I understand she's working in Little Rock School District currently?
I'm not sure of her current employment situation.
Yes.
That might be.
The last that I heard, she was working in the Little Rock School District.
Okay. Can you clarify, was she qualified without a doctorate to make evaluations of students?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that she was qualified without a doctorate. You will see on the reports that you have, some also list ed specialist. That's another degree she did not have. But as far as I know, she was qualified to do that work with the certification that she did have.
Okay. Because it concerned me that she had said she was not harming children, but in my mind, that is harming children if you're misrepresenting yourself.
And I'm glad you brought up the ed specialist. You know, we should really take a snapshot of that in our minds of a signature PhD and a signature Ed.S. You know, there's a big difference, and the inconsistency on top of the lack of verity is pretty telling.
As a parent of a child who's gone through evaluations, who struggled with sort of coming to realization and understanding that, had this been the situation with my child, I would have zero trust in what was written in that report. The damage and the emotional toll that I cannot imagine that this is taken on 16 years worth of families going through a very difficult time is astronomical.
And it's not even the difference between the degree or not the degree. It's the honesty of the person that's evaluating your child, you know. There's a very good chance that almost all, if not all, of the families that trusted her, they probably would have also trusted her had she just not misrepresented her level of degree. But it is a real gut punch when you find out that the people that you're trusting with your children's path towards improvement is being dishonest with you about their credentials. What's the proper motion to approve
Yes, there's
the
only
recommendation?
3 motions, if you recall, Ms. James.
We do this every time.
Yeah, but
Well, if we accept it, is it one? Do we just
It still will, if you can, be three motions. The first is the violation of the code of ethics and the standards. The second is uphold or modify, and the third is the rationale. And if I may ask, if you will please address the fine in the recommendation for sanction.
So the first motion is in regard to the violation of the code of ethics and the specific standards to be listed. The second motion is the sanction, and the third one is the rationale. Can you remind us what were the standards
Yes,
that were
ma'am.
violated, found by the evidentiary subcommittee?
Yes, ma'am. Those standards were 2, 3, and 4.
Board members, any questions or comments? Or are there any questions or comments on how we proceed with voting? Okay, then the floor will be open for the first motion regarding the violation of the code of ethics.
I'll make a motion that we accept the violation as determined by the PLSB, including standards 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Keener. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Dr. Arnold. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. The second motion is in regard to the sanction.
Move to uphold the recommendation of the PLSB for a revocation of the license and a $500 fine.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Wood and a second by Ms. Keener. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Third is a motion in regard to the rationale for the decision.
Is it possible to move to adopt the rationale of PLSB?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For simplicity's sake, I move to adopt the rationale of the PLSB for the sanctions.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Henderson. Any questions or comments?
Whitney has suggested that we address the fine in that rationale.
He addressed the fine and
Yes.
the sanction, yes, sir.
That is included, yeah.
May I clarify that it is the Ethics Hearing Subcommittee rationale that you wish? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, that is the end of our action agenda. Let's do the consent agenda and then we'll take a break. That's okay? Yes. But I skipped new business. No new business first before the consent agenda. Secretary.
I just want to let the board know that when we get to the commissioners' updates, I've asked our school improvement team to do an in-depth update on the status of the Blytheville School District. So it's not noticed, it's not an action item. You're not going to be asked to take any action on that, but I want the board to be fully informed of the lack of progress that school district's been making, and I may be making some considerations to have a future board meeting. So I just want to make sure you know that that's going to be in my update, as well as a brief legislative overview.
So we will do the consent agenda and then take a break and get to reports. Consent agenda, are there any items that board members want to pull for questioning? Unfortunately, we do have a number of PLSB cases. We also have a number of charter school decisions.
Can we ask questions now before pulling them?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly.
Dr. Smith, I was going to talk about Founders. What was up with their name change?
Yes, ma'am. Darrell Smith, Assistant Commissioner, Office of School Choice and Parental Empowerment. Founders, basically, they had classical in their name, and they felt like that was misleading. They were kind of changing their educational model a little bit, so that it wasn't as much as from my classical. They still wanted to do it, but not as much, and so they felt like it was a little bit maybe misleading in their title if they had classical in the title, so they took it out.
Ms. Mr. Smith, actually, while you're here, I have a question on item number 19, the Exalt Academy.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you all been in communication with them over the transfer of the schools over the past few weeks?
Yes, ma'am, daily.
Yeah.
The transition at this point is, I'm not going to say it's smooth, but it is going probably as well as it can be at this point, given some of the craziness of the moment and, again, some of the egregious things that were happening from an AMFRA standpoint, and at that point that we didn't necessarily put out in public all at once. It has come out. We shared that with the parents and with the faculty, or we haven't, but the Exalt has, because they felt like that was some necessary information that people needed, that families needed to know. The Exalt team has met with all the individual teachers. Most of them are on board with and understand fully what's been happening. They're meeting with each individual student and with their families. And of the 130 right now, they've contacted 90 families individually, have had individual meetings. 75 of those families are going to return after they've had one-on-one meetings. So they're doing a really good job, I think, of handling a really tough situation in the middle of a year and having to deal with some, obviously some hostility and maybe just a little bit of grief and a little, kind of a knee jerk that it all happened so quickly. But they have handled it well. They've been in a lot of communication with parents, a lot of communication with their staff, and so I think, given the circumstances, it's going probably as well as it can be.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you,
One
Beth.
lingering question I had when we spoke with them was about their ROTC program.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about nursing, some other things. Do you know if Exalt intends to keep that for this
They
upcoming
do. In
school year?
fact, they've already spoken to every branch of the military and trying to find which branch would be a best fit for their JROTC program going forward. So they intend to have a fully staffed and a full JROTC program as one of their pathways for next year.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Board members, additional questions on consent agenda items? Ms. Hunter?
I have a general question. This is one of the PLSB items. And in our materials, it said that there were multiple instances of past inappropriate actions between the educator and the students. And so, and dating back to 2014. And so my question is, is there not additional accountability to be had here? How is that handled? I don't,
Get Ms.
there's
James
one
up
thing
here.
to do a bad deed, but it's another one to just allow it to continue to go on unaddressed for a period of time.
Yes, ma'am, I can't talk about specifics
Just
about
general.
just a general question.
Yes.
If there have ever been PLSB cases with someone that were reported to us, then our practice has been, if it continues, the sanction kind of goes higher and higher. But if they're not reported to us, that might be what you're seeing.
Okay, all right, so then it would just be an individual district issue perhaps, or something like that.
If they haven't reported it to us and it's been going back to 2014, if they're not at a revocation level by now, that's likely what happened.
Okay,
Ms. Hunter, can you remind me what was the sanction for that one?
the sanction was, it was revocation,
Okay.
which which was
That's right.
appropriate.
Yes.
But,
We had the
but
list
it
of
just
all-
bothered me that
yes.
it kind of took that long to get to that point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Board members, any questions to my right on the consent agenda or items to pull? Okay, with that, the floor will be open for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion by Mr. Bragg to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. It has come to my attention that we have someone signed up for public comments. I think in light of the secretary having a longer board presentation, I think it makes sense to do that now, and then we'll take a break and let Marina pack up and then get to reports, if that's okay. So the way we handle public comments is that you have 3 minutes at the microphone to speak, and I have Jesse and Rachel Castleberry listed. Do you both want to speak together, or are you speaking one-on-one?
I'll primarily speak, but,
Okay.
if we don't mind her comments and things of
Absolutely.
that nature. Okay.
Thank you.
So, good morning to the State Board of Education. My name, as mentioned, is Jesse Castleberry. This is my wife, Rachel Castleberry. And we're here today to speak about the legal transfer process, the appeal that I've submitted. Now, although we were originally scheduled on the agenda, we were removed earlier this week when Camden Fairview School District submitted a motion to dismiss, and we were not given the opportunity to respond, and the state went ahead and responded and pulled me from the agenda. So I've been in communication with lead counsel Schultz about this matter, but my wife and I felt that it was extremely important to personally appear before you today, as originally scheduled, to express how critical this issue is for our daughter's future. We're simply just wanting to advocate to what is in the best interest of our daughter. She deserves the opportunity to learn in the same nurturing, academically strong, and family-rooted environment that has supported 4 generations of our family. And also, this is where 2 of her grandmothers are currently employed within the district. So we believe Camden Harmony Grove is the environment where our daughter can thrive academically and emotionally. So again, we are hopeful that the board will consider to hear our case at a future time and give our daughter the opportunity she deserves. So again, thank you for those 3 minutes. And again, we just want to express that this is near and dear to our heart and that we're still here wanting to advocate for our daughter. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today. We appreciate it.
I have no idea what's going on. But I agree that Camden Harmony Grove is the best place for their daughter. As a 1998 graduate of Camden Harmony Grove.
Just a clarifying question or maybe context. I believe the item on there was originally issued because they were trying to transfer into the district and they weren't reaching much success with the district. But I think there were some conversations, and we'll be apprised of the situation, because if they can't get parent choice resolved at the local level, which is where it needs to be resolved, sometimes those situations come to us to see if we need to intercede in the situation. So I believe that's some of the background knowledge. No.
Sorry, and yeah, we can provide additional information. Courtney Sells-Ford for the department. As to what Secretary Leva said, yes, there are often cases in which when there is no resolution at the local level, or there's a denial at the local level, that they can appeal to you all as the state board. In this case, however, Camden Fairview's denial was based on they are subject to a federal court desegregation order. And if you all were to overturn the decision, the denial of the district, that would put us in legal jeopardy for violating that federal order. So obviously we all are very, very sympathetic to the parents and their choice in wanting the best option for their child. But this is just one of those situations where you all don't have the legal authority to overturn that decision.
I know this is a public comment, and again, we've been discussing, so I don't want to belabor this meeting whatsoever. However, that's right, the reason why I agree that we're not arguing the desegregation federal order. We are arguing the justification that school district has provided, because they have already released additional children to the Harmony Grove School District under the legal transfer process to the Harmony Grove system. So.
Okay, so this is something that if it's not settled, it could still time to come back in front of the board.
Yeah, and I would, again, I think as the department, we are constantly urging every district, as we did with all the Garland County school districts, to get out from under these federal court orders. Most of them are very long-standing, and most of the school districts have been put into a place where they've been declared unitary. We can't force them into court, but we are certainly doing everything we can to ask them, why haven't you gotten back into court and asked yourself to be released from that order? And we will be continuing to work with and oversee and look with Camden Fairview as to making sure they're taking those steps.
So the burden, if you will, is on the school district to
Correct.
to request and prove that they can be released from that court.
Correct. Again, we're making it similar to the situation with Garland County. They were all subject to that desegregation order. They had to file a petition in the federal court to go in and say, we've met all of our obligations. There's no evidence of continued segregation. You need to release us. They did that, and they were released. So now it's just a matter of getting Camden Fairview and a few other districts that are still in that same situation to do the same.
So roughly how many districts are under that? 6?
Six. I think we're at 6.
So is this possible to be settled before the school year starts? We hope.
For them to get out from under the desegregation order, no.
Do we provide any sort of funding for them? I assume the legal fees are high.
I mean, yes, an attorney would be helpful to have in any type of legal proceeding. We do not provide funding. I know in other cases, the organizations that many school districts are members of, like APSRC and School Boards Association, have offered legal assistance in those cases.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will take a break and come back, let's say 11:15 to start reports. Okay, he wants to start. Y'all good? Oh my gosh. And tell them what you said. They were like, yes, done.
Don't measure up, don't measure up. Oh my God.
It was. I read it. I did look at it. Okay, with that, we are going to get back started on reports. First, open the floor for board reports. Any updates board members want to give at this point in time?
I have several.
Ms. Rollins?
I've had a pretty exciting month. First of all, I joined the East students at Lakeside Junior High in Springdale, and they worked alongside with Josh Worthy with Sonora Elementary School, and they actually connected with an astronaut as she was flying over the country. And so to make those connections with the International Space Station and an astronaut, it all has to be aligned, and the University of Arkansas helped to make that happen with radio and contact information, but they had the students all lined up to ask her questions. I think they had maybe a minute to talk to her before she was out of range. So it was really inspirational, and they had said the week before Japan tried to line up with the same astronaut, and it didn't work. So everything has to be aligned just right. So that was really exciting. And then I went to the STEM Festival, where I was the Arkansas STEM Festival, and it was in Fayetteville this year at the university, and I was recognized for my support of STEM education. So it was really, really touching for me. So yeah, it was really special. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ms. Rollins. Board members, any other updates or things going on this month? Mr. Henderson?
Yeah, I had the privilege of attending a quarterly state workforce board meeting Monday. It was very refreshing to hear the leadership talk about the direction that the state is going in as far as the collaboration with workforce education, aligning those efforts. We had Chief Workforce Officer Mike Rogers there, Cody Waits, Dr. Tina Moore gave some really good updates on behalf of Department of Education. Really good meeting, a lot of collaboration. I'm really excited about the direction that the state is moving into.
Awesome. Well, with that, Mr. McCaslin,
Smith.
we're excited to hear from you this month.
All righty. Good to be back. Go back to April. April is the month of all of our career tech student organizations wrapping up their state conventions. So I'll take you through those here in just a second. But I want to start off with a story that we'll just keep going with it. But went on a visit with to Colton, to Lake Hamilton, where they had a young man who is basically the walking billboard for being day one ready for enrollment, employment, or enlistment. Colton started off in school in Akron, Arkansas. Akron is a very small community, small school district outside of Mena. In the 7th grade, he was recruited to join FCCLA. I believe it was the only student organization they had at the time. But he thrived. It gave him an opportunity to lead. He went on to become a state officer. And then family got transferred to Hot Springs. He joins the Lake Hamilton School District. Has a lot more opportunities in the small district. Most kids would stay in their comfort lane. He joined them all. He joined every organization, including JROTC, went on to become a completer in ROTC, graduating from Lake Hamilton, and now he's headed to West Point. And it's just a great example of the path that a student in Arkansas can take if we're giving them opportunities in rural Arkansas and then just pushing them to go above and beyond. Really a cool story.
What was his name?
Colton Quibido. And it has an X on it.
All right.
There, at the end. Now we'll go backwards. Then we had the FBLA State Convention here in Little Rock. There were probably about 1,500 kids there, just a massive crowd of kids. The very next week we had Skills USA's Arkansas State Convention. I believe several of you have been down there before. It's just an awesome sight to see all the different pathways and industries involved. I just want to point out these two men with me. That is Michael Westbrook on my right and Cortez Akins on my left. Mr. Westbrook is the teacher at Bryan High School. Mr. Akins is the teacher at Arkansas High. That is two men who previously had broadcast careers and have made the crossover into teaching, and both of their programs have just thrived. And it's just a great example of the importance of getting high quality teachers in those CTE positions. They don't necessarily have to come from that field, but if you can pull them out of that field, the immediate impact that they can have on students. And then the following next week, Arkansas FFA State Convention. This was my first trip to the FFA State Convention, and I was blown away. So many partners across the state of Arkansas are involved to make that just a great event, and I really encourage anyone, if they've ever doubted our future, all right, as far as the generations coming up, they need to slip into the FFA State Convention and see how much leadership skills we have throughout our youth that are in the state of Arkansas, because they are on display there in Hot Springs. Just a really cool event. And then finally, last week, I was in Austin, Texas, on the campus of the University of Texas at the LBJ Presidential Library. This was for Module 4 of our Presidential Scholarship Leadership Program. This module focused on LBJ's use of influence and persuasion. He was known as a close talker, as you can see that in the picture on the left, but just a really cool experience for us to learn through the lens of his administration. We got to hear from his daughter, as well as from a couple that worked in his administration. What was surprising to us, and I don't think we all realized it, was how much legislation was passed in the 60s in a volatile decade that was immediate impact on education that we still deal with today. But just a great learning experience. Next month we head to College Station. Will be Module 5. We will learn through the lens of the Bush 41 administration. Looking forward to that. And then we'll wrap up in June in DC.
That's awesome. That's amazing that you're a part of that.
It's amazing.
I'm jealous.
So
Yeah.
National championship.
Yeah.
It's been a good year.
Well, thank you. Any further questions, comments, board members? Awesome. Well, we'll kick it to Secretary.
So got a couple things I want to run through in the commissioner's report, but first I'm going to ask Stacy Smith to come up. We put together some recent data on the kind of state of the state with Blytheville. If you remember, go back quite a few months ago, even before the start of the school year, we had some concern about the direction that Blytheville was headed, and we even did a joint board meeting with our board and their board to talk about, let's work together to put some pieces in place so that we can make sure we improve learning. They're historically, persistently one of our lowest performing school districts in the state, and we can't sit idle and watch that happen. So I think there's some wins, right? That there's some celebrations that we want to update with the board, but then there's still some concerns that I think we're going to need to address as well. So what I've asked Sheila and Stacy to do is do kind of high-level overview on what does the data look like for this year of transition? What did we do as an agency? What external supports did we help provide? And why aren't we seeing sustainable leadership happening at the board level?
Yep, thank you. Again, Stacy Smith, Deputy Commissioner. I'm not going to belabor every one of these slides, okay? But I did add some slides in here to kind of take us back to why we got involved with Blytheville to begin with. One of the things that we've seen over time is a loss of student enrollment. This school year alone, they continue to lose. They've lost another 102 students. Atlas Summative, this was last year's test. This is not the test they just took. But you can see that orange for ELA, more than 53% of their students scored in the lowest level, level 1. That means they are clearly behind grade level. In math, 76% of their combined students, grades 3 all the way through geometry, 76% scored in the lowest achievement level. Science, 57% of their students. They are one of the lowest performing school districts in the state. So that's what brought us there last year. Interim assessment data taken throughout the year. This has to do with levels 2 and above. Everything that you see like on the spring side, if it's not over 50, then that means less than 50%. That means 50% or more are still in that lowest level. And this was predictions heading into the summative evaluation. We are seeing some growth, and that's what you see there in the green from winter to spring. But there's been a lot of work happening in the buildings. Blytheville teachers, one of the things we really hit on when we were on campus in Blytheville was the number of unlicensed and partially licensed teachers that were within the district. For this school year, our team has been down there. Those teachers that are unlicensed are all on pathways now, right? One of the things we talked about in their special education is they didn't have certified licensed special education folks. We have people that are appropriately licensed. We have had some loss in high school for licensed teachers, and so it's just kind of like we're flipping. I think some of that has to do with still some instability within the district as a whole, and people having confidence in the district's viability going forward.
Is there a significant enrollment decline from 17 to 25?
Yes, and I think that's a great observation, because so they've dropped 1,000 students, more than 1,000 students. So you're seeing the number of teachers required mirror that. But where did all those licensed teachers go? Right? Like we're losing students, and then high quality educators are leaving with those students. There's a correlation there.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've done this year with, again, trying to get right sized, the school district actually had 5 separate school buildings. We've worked with the district to consolidate that down into 3 next year, right? So licensed teachers in the staff, in the classrooms are important. Another thing that we saw when we were there earlier this year was the number of virtual teachers in the primary grades, especially K1, 2. Remember that? We've taken care of that, but it's still not solved. This was a conversation, if you'll remember, we talked about the number of observations that were documented within the system. When you look over at the blue, we were showing number of observations documented at the elementary school as only being 4.
Explain what that means.
That means an administrator going in and observing and giving feedback to a teacher. Okay, that is increased from 4 it's an increase to 111 now. So we have staff in there working with folks about how to go into classrooms, how to do quick observations, and how to give feedback. So you can see the plus on that is a total net change of 255 classroom visits. And that's because of direct support that I'm going to kind of outline for you.
No, and I think if you could expand upon that, of why it's important for administrators to be in classrooms, to know what's happening in classrooms, to make sure teachers are able to have the resources they need and the support they need, and make sure that learning is happening at the level that we would like to see, but also the coaching of that instructional leader. That's the role of principals and assistant principals now, is to be the leader of instruction. They needed support and training. Were those principals receptive to that? How is that feedback? Why is this important?
Yeah. So that has been the primary support that you're going to see laid out here in these next couple of slides. We have spent a lot of time in the buildings with principals, doing direct coaching in classrooms, direct coaching with principals, doing classroom walkthroughs. When you get principals in classrooms, that gets engagement up, it gets better teaching, instruction, quality, it's improvement on safety. I mean, there are so many factors when you get administrators in the rooms, you get specialists in the rooms, and you have improved teaching. When you have the number of staff at this school district specifically that are unlicensed, the amount of support they need on basic concepts of classroom management, selecting the appropriate standard, instructional strategies to use, it just gets amplified.
So I think when we look overall for updates, this is a celebration, right? This is a celebration that the administration that's leading the schools, the boots on the ground, are receptive to coaching and feedback. Their actions are working towards what we would want to see. And it's also a win for the teachers for being willing to open up and be vulnerable, right? Sometimes it's not easy to be vulnerable and have adults in your classrooms that you may work with on a daily basis or may not, but changing the culture in the school starts with the administration knowing what their expectations are and supporting those teachers in classrooms. And I think the data shows something that should be applauded for those leaders that are boots on the ground making a difference.
I would most definitely agree. Some of the outside direct support that the district has been open to, and this outside support has been, some of it's been directed and some of it's been encouraged that they took ownership of it. The TNTP support, that is an outside, the New Teacher Project group that actually provides leadership and coaching. They receive that through $1003, so we sent support in there. The TNTP is an excellent program, excellent specialist, highly sought after. So they've had that type of boots on the ground support. Really great reading. That was what Dr. Pride's team chose to provide for literacy support. It became with state-supported literacy coach and a vendor providing K-3 literacy coaching. Again, this all had to be coordinated because this is a lot of people going into schools to support. Educational directions, we actually encourage the district, and this is similar to what we've done in the past with some of our other districts, to put out an RFP recognizing that they need direct support, especially in operational management. And so they put out an RFP. They got several different vendors who came and presented to the board, and they selected educational directions. This group has made 64 on-site visits, 51 virtual interactions, totaling 115 of documented touch points of support. They have ongoing coaching. They're primarily focused on district level leadership and building level leadership.
Stacey, just to kind of reiterate, these are national organizations that work with struggling school districts all across the United States. And this is some of the work that they specialize in to go above and beyond. So this would be above and beyond Sheila's team providing support, above and beyond the educational cooperative who has also been providing support, building capacity from national experts around some of the specified topics was something that was important to the district as well.
And again, we were pleased to see that they took the advice to put out an RFP for an outside provider to come in and provide that support, and selected a group as educational directions to come in and get that additional support.
So how is that funded?
So the TNT project was federal funds from the department. Really great reading, again, with state funds, funding a literacy coach because of the percentage of students and their letter grades. Educational directions would have been funded by the district, probably with federal funds and maybe left as their ESA. Yeah, ESA funding, so their own district funding. Office of Coordinated Support and Service. This is Sheila's team, okay? Over 100 days of direct support on site this school year from people from the department going directly there. We also facilitated 2 visits to the Academy of Math and Science School in Little Rock. Okay, that is a charter school that's doing some really good, impressive work. So again, it's like trying to put this district in a position for possibly a transformational contract, letting them get outside of their buildings to go see some opportunities of what they'd like their school to look at. We organized 2 different visits to the school. In governance engagement, trying to do more trainings with their school board. We organized a training with the Arkansas School Boards Association. We actually, I think Dr. Rice from Pine Bluff, from that transitional board, came in and actually talked to them and did some training with them. So we're, again, trying to make some connections about owning your kind of your destiny with your school district, and this is the time. And then operational support from our fiscal services unit, providing direct support. DESE support outside of Ms. Whitlow's team. You had school safety unit on site 3 different times. You had learning services zooming on literacy plans, site visits to the primary and elementary buildings, ensuring that high quality instructional materials are present, providing K-3 literacy support through really great reading. You had facilities and transportation on site with routine checkups, and you had the Officer of Educator Effectiveness on site 3 different times, working with their unlicensed staff to get them on a pathway. Educational Cooperatives has 185 on-site visits documented this last year. When I say we have given lots of support, we have given lots of support, and this is a district that is in level 4.
How would it be different? I mean,
Level 4 support, right. So where we're at right now, I want to talk you through the transition of leadership from this district and kind of what our concerns are. Again, you saw that they had a superintendent back in the early 2000s with some consistency, and then you started seeing in 2021, we had our first interim with Jennifer Blankenship, who's the interim now, brought in a superintendent for a year and a half. Then you had Dr. Perkins, who came in for 2 years. That's when this board, we got involved, okay? She was actually put on leave. She wasn't terminated yet when we first got there. And so this is kind of the timeline of this year. Ms. Blankenship was appointed interim. We had a state board meeting there in August. Superintendent Perkins was terminated in August. So at this point, we're here working with them. They did not post the superintendent position until November. And they did not hire a search firm to assist. They just posted it on their own in November, which was fine. Late November, the board reviewed applications, and they opted to keep their interim because they didn't feel like they had good candidates. And we actually talked about that here, all right? And we felt like we supported the decision that they didn't have a viable candidate. Keep who you got. Let's find the right person. February, did not hire a search firm until the end of February. And all of this at the same time is with our teams, the co-op teams, everybody there walking alongside them, prompting them and asking them to get these things posted. You need to get moving. You've got to make some decisions. Hired a search firm in February, April 24th. The search firm presented 2 of the 13 applicants. The board declined to interview the 2 applicants. And on April 28th, the superintendent position, again, was reposted. So they posted, didn't have good applicants, hired a search firm. They were brought 15 applications, had two viable candidates that the search firm put forth. They went back and reposted again, had a special board meeting on April 29th, and no action taken.
so Stacy, did they offer any rationale about why they didn't pursue the 2 applicants that were brought forward in April?
Yeah, that was discussed in their executive session.
Gotcha, thank you.
They didn't give the public a reason for not moving forward?
You were at the meeting.
No, they went into executive session and came out and just said that they were declining and they were not going to interview the 2 applicants that were brought by the search firm. But there were no reasons given.
Just curious, and for clarity, they contracted with a search firm,
Yes, sir.
which means the district had to pay the search firm for the services, right? Like, go out and solicit a firm that they're gonna say, we're gonna give you money to help us find a quality candidate. Search firm produces quality candidates. The board says, we're not gonna listen to the search firm. Is that
That's
fair?
correct.
Yeah, and something else I want to add to that. We're actively recruiting for them as well. All right, we're actively creating multiple paths for them to consider. A transformational contract, an educational operator, partnering them with a possible charter school. We're calling people we know that live in the area that are previous superintendents saying, hey, have you thought about this? Okay? We're doing all this, and repeatedly, we're hearing concerns about the board and the dysfunction. The transformational contract, they actually put out an RFP for an operational management for a transformational contract. ASMA was one of those, the charter schools was interested. They didn't follow back with they didn't follow back up. They just let it die. So it's kind of like we're going through the actions on some things, but we're never following through.
Are they split, or are there some that are wanting to, some board members that are excited about these opportunities?
I definitely think there's some split, but I think bigger than that, there's a lack of coherence with the board, for one. There is dysfunction. I think at the last board meeting, we had to call the police at the end of it. You still have board members arguing with people in the audience. If you can remember when we were there before, much of the public comment in the meeting was about the dysfunction of the board. It wasn't about what was happening in the school. It was about this public image of the board. I will say that Ms. Whitlow early on felt like they were responding well. They were having, they were making progress, but it just seems like we're sliding right back in to where we are. Our biggest concern at this point is we are in May and we have no superintendent, and we have walked with this district for an entire year, providing lots of support, and walked side the co-op providing lots of support. They have moments where you're like, okay, they're going to do it. Oh, this is great. This was a good visit. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times Ms. Whitlow comes to my office weekly to brag on something happening in Blytheville, only to come back then 2 weeks later and say, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, I got him there. Oh, it didn't. It's like this, it's just this dance of inconsistency. In the buildings where the direct support's being given to principals and to teachers, we're welcomed. People are receptive. The dysfunction occurs between the central office and the board. We don't have the right people in either place.
So if I could add to that, this is a region of the state that should be thriving, right? This is a school district where there's opportunities for students and families to be very successful. There is no reason that this school district should continue to be the failure factory that it is. And it's becoming more and more apparent the reason they're in the state of the state they are is because they do lack governance and leadership. And I feel like as we're giving this update, there are a lot of celebrations. There is learning happening in classrooms now that weren't happening before. But having Sheila's team run a school district's unsustainable. Having to rely on outside providers to do all the work is unsustainable. We need a sustainability plan. And the plan that we've been working with the board, the tasks that we've been giving the board to move towards a sustainability plan as we pass the baton and make this transition, they have continually let us down. Every time they've been asked to get a simple task across the finish line, they can't do it. I'm at the point where I feel like we're at no other choice, and this is for information. I want to be clear that this presentation is for information to this board. But that I want to start moving forward, working with our team to officially notify them that I will be making a recommendation to move to level 5 district status or takeover, whatever the right vernacular is, and would like to even consider, get solicit feedback from this board if they would consider holding a special meeting in Blytheville so we can listen to the community directly as we make that recommendation to see if we're moving in the right direction.
Only if our bodyguard can come. She served as our bodyguard last time. Yes.
Hey, Stacy, I want to make sure that just for clarification, because I do know some of the board members, and, you know, we've seen so many times when it's a split vote, or it's more favorable 4-3, or whatever the case may be, when it comes to making some of these decisions. When the opportunity came to select two of those candidates for potentially superintendent, do anyone know what that looked like? How did that look?
How the vote was
Yeah.
split, it was a unanimous decision not to select either one. And again, we're in May. I mean, and if anything, I felt like we listened very closely when you charged us with, don't let us get to this point, right? Make sure we're proactive, and I think we have been very proactive. I'll tell you, this one right here is probably sick to her stomach because this is uncomfortable because she loves this district and she spends times, and these are people that she's created relationships with, but we stand here before you for students with any type of recommendation. So again, I do think it's fair that we let the district, I mean, I'm presenting today and the district is not here. But I felt like it was important on the last update that we received, that you guys received an update sooner than later.
Along those lines, so Ms. Blankenship has served as the interim this year. Did they do any hiring of her for next year? Or they've just tabled any sort of
Everything
decision?
has been tabled.
Okay. And
Right,
when-
and that adds to it. We are in, they just now hired their staff for next year at the last April board meeting, and that was because we pointed out that they hadn't done it yet. They have yet to offer contracts.
What? They haven't offered contracts to their,
As of the update of this, they had not offered contracts yet. So if you have good staff there, like the potential of continuing to lose, or community people saying, I'm going to take my kid and go elsewhere, right? And there's so much opportunity in this school district.
Did you all look at the applicants, and did you feel it wasn't as such that there was no one qualified that could do the position?
Ms. Whitlow was aware of some of the applicants, and she felt like there were viable applicants in the pool.
Okay, so that, okay.
Have many of the board members been through training?
Yes, and we actually organized training for them. We brought them here to Little Rock. They've gone to the conferences. We brought in Dr. Rice from Pine Bluff to talk to them specifically about dysfunctions of a board and how that can tear you down. I mean, we actually have tried to provide very specific support to address the needs and allow them the opportunity to respond. Like, right, they did do the RFPs, they did do things, but as far as following through with actual actions, they cannot get in alignment to agree.
I mean, so Stacey, whenever you went through the hours and hours of, I mean, like, how much your staff and the co-op and everything, I mean, like, how would that compare to a level 5 support situation? I mean, is it essentially that's what you're doing?
So when you get to level 5 support, there are sanctions that come with that.
Yes.
That's when we get into conversations about, appointment of a superintendent,
Right.
dissolving the board. The amount of support that we provided them is comparable to what we were providing to like a Little Rock or a Pine Bluff or a Helena, West Helena right now.
Okay.
We have been full on. It's the same thing we did with Watson Chapel.
Yep.
Gave them the opportunity to take action and do it on their own versus us coming in. This is just, we're just seeing a little bit different outcome here.
Understood, thank you.
Stacey, I do have one more comment, well, several. Dr. Pride gave a really good presentation earlier this morning about NYS, and we've seen all the math and science recognitions and awards being displayed today. When I think about Academy Math and Science, and I think you said it was 2 visits, and I think they came to Blytheville also, didn't it? So it was actually 3 interactions, and there was not a connection. Basically, I just want to get clarification on that.
The comments when folks were on site were positive. We felt like actually at one point that this was going to organically on their own be something that the district and the school came up with on their own, and that we would help facilitate, but we were trying to create something that they felt like they made the choice in, right? So when the board members did those sites, their comments were things like, I can see I'd love our school to look like this. I'd love our kids to have these experiences. That we got those positive feedbacks, and that's why we continue to, okay, let's see if we can continue to promote this relationship.
Well, you know, undoubtedly, you know, I have a technical background, and I'm sitting here listening to the secretary. He mentioned that area should be thriving, and it's hard for me to, you know, just imagine that those opportunities are being not looked at. You know, when you think about inactivity, that's strict to me personally. That means denial. You deny little boys, little girls the opportunity to move forward. You deny them the opportunities for possibilities. You deny them the opportunities for economical opportunities. So I'm very disappointed.
Well, and when I reflect on this last year, and I reflect back to when we went to Blytheville, the number of people from the community that showed up to that meeting, the number of people that gave public comment at that meeting, and they were hopeful, but most of the comments that night were aimed directly at the board. And so I think our next steps is that we will probably notify the district of a special board meeting and the request to move to level 5.
If that's okay with the chair and the will of the board, that they would be open to doing a special meeting in Blytheville to then look at an action item that would be coming forth as a recommendation. I'd like to get that scheduled in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks.
There's a process of, we would send them a written notification that we're going to make the recommendation to move them to level 5. They have a certain number of days to appeal and ask for a hearing before you. So they can either come and do a hearing, or we make that recommendation with no hearing.
So a level 5 isn't necessarily taking over the...
No, you would determine the sanctions that go with that.
We would be making a recommendation to the board for consideration.
Okay.
I support that completely.
So
I mean,
feel
I
like
don't know.
okay.
I don't know what you need to know from us, but
Yeah.
I mean,
As soon as you want to have a special meeting up there, I think it'd probably be a good idea.
I agree.
I don't want to belabor this.
Yeah,
We gotta make a
exactly.
decision.
Yeah.
And I want to say, this team works extremely hard.
Yeah.
The DESI team has worked extremely hard. The co-op has stepped up and pushed in. Everybody that we've asked to push into this to take care of this situation has done so. I appreciate your attentiveness to this. Thank you.
I would caution that level 5 intervention rarely has the celebratory results that we're looking for on the backside of level 5. It is not an answer in itself. There is still a long road of work ahead, even after a level 5 consideration. And I would hope for a strong plan and decisive plan, quick action plan, because the one thing I learned in the level 5 I lived through was just the slow process of it didn't work. Everybody learned a lot.
Yeah, Little Rock taught us a lot of lessons, and I think that as we've moved past Little Rock and some of our other state takeovers, and we don't want to take over. We definitely do not, but I would think, I can point to Pine Bluff right now. Is Pine Bluff where we want them to perform academically? No. Do they have structures in place? Do I believe that the growth trajectory for them is going to go? I 100% do. Helena, West Helena, we see some strong improvements there. And you guys treated each one of those differently. And that's what we'll do here. We'll come with a plan. I appreciate the comment.
We're going to move forward with diligence.
Thank you.
The next item under Commissioner's report, I don't know if you've been following along, but we just wrapped up a legislative session within the past few weeks. I hope you've been paying attention. While I read somewhere over 1,000 bills were signed into law, a lot of them dealt with education. So Courtney's going to come up and just kind of do a high level overview of a couple of the bills that we're going to probably prioritize a little bit more. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. In fact, we're still going through the planning phase of now that bills have been signed, which had an emergency clause, when do the other ones go into effect, which requires rules, which requires notices, what are things we want to celebrate, what is going to come to this board. So she's just going to do a snapshot of some of the things I think this board may find of interest, and probably every meeting over the next few months, there'll be some kind of legislative update on where we are with different laws and different rules in the process.
Yeah, so as the secretary said, there were actually over 1,600 bills filed. Over 1,000 of those were signed into law, and over 200 of those had to do with education alone. So it was a very busy session, but I think overall still a successful session for us. We got some very big things through, namely the Access Act, which most of you have already heard lots about, know lots about. But that was definitely the Governor Sanders' signature education legislation for 25. That was enacted into 2 acts that are identical, but Acts 340 and 341, so you will probably hear us refer to it either by one of those numbers or as Access. I'm not going to go into that a lot because I feel like we've covered a lot of that in past work sessions, and as the secretary also said, we're currently looking at all of the legislation to determine which ones are going to necessitate rules. We're looking at about 61 sets of rules right now that are either going to need to be amended or drafted. That's pre-K to higher ed, so you will see many of those, and we'll continue to keep you updated on those. But in addition to Access and all the improvements that we made for acceleration in K-12 and providing access to students towards higher education, we also made some good strides in terms of choice and making sure that students and parents have the good quality options. There was some legislation, Act 800, around the charter authorizing process, and Daryl, of course, could speak very well to this, but strengthening that process to make sure that we are getting quality charters, and that when they go through the application process, there are certain standards that are set forth, and it's really a results-driven contract. And so the charter panel, of course, has initial oversight of those, but in any case in which they disagree with one of those decisions, it will come to you all as the board. You all still will see those on your agenda come through as consent items typically, unless an appeal is requested. But anytime they're making changes to grade levels, to location, anything like that, you will still see those charter issues come through. One of the big pieces of that legislation, though, requires an automatic closure of a charter school that gets a letter grade of F 3 years in a row. So again, we want choice, we want options, but we want quality options. And so if a school is not performing and they get an F letter grade 3 years in a row, they do have the right to appeal that decision to you, but it's an automatic revocation, so that we can make sure we are focusing on getting those quality options available. We also expanded, and if you guys have questions about any of this, please feel free to let me know. Do you have anything? Go ahead.
So is the automatic revocation retroactive? I mean,
No.
or do we start?
It would be nice, wouldn't it? But no, the law does not go into effect until, I think we're calculating about August 3rd right now, and so it will be with the letter grades that are issued for the 25-26 school year. And going out. So school districts can't say, well, we didn't have time. They definitely have plenty of runway in the next 3 years to address those. And that's part of the new system that Daryl's team is working on, is making sure that they know what we're looking at. They know what the standards are being set for them and the goals that they're expected to meet. And if they can't meet those, then it's not through any fault of ours.
The application is we're really making a transition, that it's a performance contract, and the metrics are going to be clear. And if you can't meet the terms and conditions of your contract, why should we let you stay in place for years and years and years and hurt students year after year after year?
We also expanded the Teacher of the Year program to make sure that charter schools could participate in that. We know all of our public schools have great educators, but we also know there's some great educators in the charter schools, and all teachers should be eligible for that Teacher of the Year program. So we look forward to seeing some additional great candidates in that.
Does it not include private school teachers?
No, it does not. It's currently just public schools. But charter schools are public schools, so they should be in there. In addition, for enhancing family choice, there was some legislation passed, Act 732, that opens up school choice transfers to intra-district. So most of you know that for public schools, you go to the school that you're zoned for. And we've had public school choice where you could request to go to another school district. Well, now this requires school districts to allow requests to other schools. So if you are zoned for school A, but you want to go to school B because you think that's better for your student, you can make that request. There still has to be capacity. We know districts can't just take everybody, but they have to at least allow those requests and have processes in place and make sure that parents are aware of those options. We truly want public school choice, which means you shouldn't have to go to the school just because of where you live. You should get to pick the school that goes, best fits your students' needs. Also, along the lines of school choice, the timeline for applications was extended from May 1st to June 1st. You know, a lot of parents aren't always aware or don't know that they want to make a change until later in that school year, and so they have from January 1 to June 1 to now submit a school choice application. The timelines for school districts responding are still the same, and so that way hopefully parents have plenty of time to make those decisions for their students.
That doesn't go into effect though until this next year?
That is correct, yeah, because this will not go into effect until August. The May 1 date for this year is already passed. Another big success for us was the Educational Freedom Account Program Integrity, Act 920. We have a great EFA program going. I think the success of that program will continue, and we're certainly seeing a desire from parents to use EFAs to make those options for their students. But we just needed to make a few little cleanup things in there. So we had to clarify what some of the allowable expenses were. I'm sure some of you saw information about, you know, things like extracurricular activities, and we had questions all the time about art or field trips, and so we want those to be part of every student's academic success, and they should have access to those. So those are allowable expenses, but there are also some limits on there so that we make sure students are using the majority of those funds for curriculum and tuition and things like that.
I do have a question on that. So in the rules, it states that the law states that our board had to approve the allowable expenditures, and we approved that in rules.
Yes.
But then after that, the department then had a long list of other things that were eligible. Are these rules going to be readdressed with this new law, and could you all put everything in law? I mean, in rules, such that, you know, after the fact, the department is not making other decisions that our board is not aware of?
Right. No, everything will have to be addressed in rule. So yes, now that this legislation is passed, that will be one of our priority rules to look at. Everything that's approved should fit into a category that is in the rules or in the law. I'm not sure.
It said other things as listed. So if you're going to approve that, you know, extracurricular activities.
Daryl, do you have any ideas of like other things that maybe wouldn't be included in a specific category?
Typically, yeah, I think everything that we try to approve is always in one of those eligible categories. I think we left that because of some of the individuals. At times, there are some very specific, especially students with disabilities, that may not necessarily be an eligible category or eligible expense, but yet when it comes across, that gives us the ability to go ahead and approve that without having to add it to a list for everybody.
Yeah, I just think the more specific you get to the rules, then y'all aren't having to, you know, make case-by-case decisions, such as we did not approve the extracurricular stating you can do, you know, 2 gymnastics a week. You can pay for that. That feels like a very oddly specific decision that you all have to make that maybe should have some public accountability
and
to
extracurricular
it.
is addressed in the law now, so that will be.
So those rules will be revisited to put clarity
Yes, and we will be
around that.
comparing what's in the new law put that in the rules, and then we'll compare that against what they have been approving to, again, make sure
Yeah.
that we are addressing everything as much as possible. We do like to have that catch-all in the end, just in
Just
case
other things
there's-
as approved,
yeah,
that just
there's
makes me so
something
nervous.
that we can't think of. But yeah,
But then that
we'll
just
review
opens
that.
up that you approve it for one person and then you have to, I think the more you can spell out and rule, the more you all can and follow that, as opposed to having to have so much gray area.
Right, no, I absolutely agree on that. We'll try to be as specific as we can, but those rules will go out for public comment and will come to the state board and the legislature for approval.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so transparency and accountability. I think we've not been quiet about the fact that we want to make sure parents know what their options are and that we are holding all schools accountable. So in addition to letter grades for schools, we will be rolling out letter grades for school districts and charter schools. Secretary talked about this a little bit earlier and how those district grades will be calculated, but that again will also be coming to you in rules, excuse me, as well as for education service cooperatives. And so we want to make sure that parents are aware of the performance not only in their school, but their district, their education service cooperative area, so that they can make those choices. We did pause school letter grades for the 23-24 year. That was about just transitioning to the new Atlas assessment, coming up with the new formula that you guys approved today. And so that's just kind of our standard practice that we did as well last time when we switched assessments. And then this was not an act that was passed, but actually a bill that was not passed, but we wanted to bring to note that there were some attempts to make it so that school districts couldn't advertise their letter grades, but we want parents to know letter grades and we want them to be able to compare. And so I thought that was just something important to note, was that we were able to make sure that those were not enacted. Two other big priorities for the legislature and for the governor was to ensure that all students have access to a free school breakfast. And so any student, regardless of whether they qualify under federal standards or not, can have free school breakfast every day. And then also the Bell-to-Bell No Cell Act. We have talked to you about the governor's initial pilot program to prohibit cell phone use in schools, to limit students' access to cell phones. Well, now it's in legislation, in law, that school districts have to prohibit cell phone use during instructional time. It's not that they have to take the phones away from students, but they have to make sure that they are put away in a locker or a pouch or whatever the school district feels is the most appropriate, but making sure that students do not have access to their cell phones so that we can protect that instructional time. Yes.
And that does start this upcoming school year.
Yes, it absolutely does.
And I believe, does it say that they have to submit plans, is it to the department or to the board?
They have to submit their policy to the department. But we can report information like that to you all, and just kind of going forward after we review those and make sure we are actually working on a model policy for school districts. And so ideally, if they all just adopt that one, then we'll know they're good, but there may be some variations and things that we have to look at.
If you all see that the policies aren't strong enough or too strong, will you all have any feedback loop with the districts on that?
Yes, absolutely. They have to submit them to us if we feel like they're not addressing consequences. Because we didn't want to, or the legislature didn't want to dictate in the law what the consequences had to be, leaving that to the district discretion. But there needs to at least be some explanation in that policy so that students know what the repercussions are if they violate the policy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then moving on to improving school oversight. Again, this is all about transparency and accountability, making sure that the public has access to school board agendas, meeting minutes, member information. I think honestly, one of the biggest complaints we get and the biggest number of phone calls we get at the department a lot is I don't know what my school board is voting on. I don't know what their agenda is. They don't allow public comment. So through Acts 120 and Act 902, it is now required that all school boards post their agendas, post their minutes, post member contact information, and that they have the opportunity for the public to make comment during school board meetings. You all allow public comment every day, every time you meet, and so I think that's just fitting that you should have that opportunity at the local level as well. There was also several bills about board member terms, board vacancy procedures, and how those should be filled. I think that goes a long way to create some consistency and uniformity. Again, we will provide you a lot more detailed information on how all these changes are going to roll out, especially around school board elections. That's something that we've received a lot of questions on, and so we are just reviewing all those to make sure we have all the answers before we give out anything too specific. And then there was also an option for school board recalls, and so again, we'll look at all those legal mechanisms, but there is one now so that local school board members can be recalled if certain requirements and things are met. So I know that was a very high-level overview, and out of over 200 bills, I only talked about, maybe 15 to 20 of them. We're going to be bringing those to you. We will bring you the list of all of the rules that are going to be, and then once our legislative guide is published, we'll certainly make that available to you all. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to Mary or myself or Stacy, and we can get you the information you need on those.
I do have a question, but Mr. Bragg, you can go first.
I just want to say, by the time a bill reaches the floor for a vote, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that has gone into this, and I was privileged to watch a lot of it. And I want to commend the department for their hard work. And I know she won't want me to say this, but those of you that don't know Sarah Kemeny with the department on the governor's staff, I watched her navigate a lot of icebergs and dealing with legislators, and it's not always a pleasant experience. But they did a yeoman's job, and really, I was real impressed at the way they interacted with the legislators, and really did a good job.
Thank you. I did have a lingering question. I didn't follow it. Were there changes in regard to teacher licensure and Act 1240 waivers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yes.
I don't know if you want to go into them. Yeah, I mean,
that was just something that our board's talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that the board has talked a lot about, that did get passed and signed into law, that districts won't be getting a school or a district waiver, that every teacher is on a personal pathway to licensure that follows that teacher. So there's no more waivers with districts and schools. That has definitely got across the finish line. Stacey, did I miss it?
Yeah, we actually released a commissioner's memo yesterday that basically is notifying districts that if they have a current teacher on a waiver, they have to go in and fill out a simple application to say this is the teacher, this is what they're doing. Then our staff will work with that teacher to put them on their teacher licensure plan. They have 3 years to complete it. So that teacher licensure plan, and then that's the process.
So, and just a point of clarification there, you said the district is going in and
That's the first thing.
Okay.
So, yeah,
But going forward,
it's not assigned to the district, it's assigned to but the district is saying,
here are my people.
yeah, I have Courtney and she's not licensed, but the district is responsible now once they have hired Courtney.
Hire somebody to make
And
sure
we
they're
put Courtney on a licensure plan, the district is responsible to make sure that she's receiving the support that's in the plan,
Fair.
that they're keeping up with her status, and that they're reporting back to us all the documentation needed to make sure that she gets fully licensed.
Right, but then ultimately.
It's
in
on
your
Courtney.
example, it's on Courtney.
That's right.
To, and at the end of 3 years, she might be out.
Mhm.
She didn't do what was expected.
Right, yeah, it's on Courtney to get it done. When districts make choices to hire folks that are unlicensed, they need to also be making the choices to support them adequately, because they're coming in, with 1 foot, in a hole, right? They need support, and so the district making sure that they're supporting those folks.
And we do have some kind of mechanism to make sure that at the end of 3 years for Courtney, she doesn't go re-up another 3 years.
They're building that into our licensure system, and so once she does her background check, she'll get a case ID number. It'll document that she was on an alternate licensure plan, and we can keep track of that time. There is something in legislation that allows for circumstances beyond 3 years, special circumstances. Let's say someone had a cancer diagnosis or something happened. There is an appeal process, and I believe that actually comes to the board.
Yeah.
Goes through your office to the board for us to say we're approving this. There are special circumstances.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. So proud.
Yeah, thank you all, because that has been.
There were too many good things to highlight them all, but I'm glad you asked. That was a very
Yeah.
important one.
Were there any other laws changed around the Act 1240 waiver process?
Trying to remember. There was a few things around timing, but not anything extensive.
Okay.
The majority of the waivers that we typically see were around licensure, so we do feel like that's going to clean up a lot of the issues. But there are still provisions for some of those out there.
Do you feel that the current law allows our board to revoke a waiver that's been granted?
That's a legal question that
Okay,
I'd be
yeah,
happy to
I'm
research
curious,
and talk to you about later.
I think I'd like to talk to you about it. Not that I have one specific in mind, but I did recently ask to get all of the school districts that have waivers around time, and whether it be seat time or school year. I know in the past there have been districts that we granted for them to have less time so that they could have early dismissal. Doesn't look like we have any of those right now. But I would like to, ensure that whatever waivers we've granted, we have an understanding currently of what they are. Most of them around seat time or clock hours were all charter, whether it be district conversion or virtual. And I would love for someone, maybe the charter panel at some point, to have that conversation as well, thinking about, are they also allowing those districts to lessen the amount of student instruction time?
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something we're looking at, and legal reviews of waiver requests when they come in our new process, I think, is going to be a lot better about even making sure, does a charter school or a school district need the waiver that they're asking for? We've identified several situations recently where a district wanted to do something they didn't even need a waiver for. But in looking at that, there's a lot of flexibility that is allowed in law around school calendars and hours versus days. And so as long as that continues to exist in law, there's not a lot we can do about it. But looking at the waivers, certainly we want to make sure that waivers are only being granted for things that we think are best for kids and supportive, and that those school districts are being held accountable.
I also think that in the future, it's just my personal opinion, there does need to be some cleanup around what is considered instructional time and what that looks like, not to micromanage districts, but to make sure we have a sort of a minimum threshold of what instruction looks like for students.
Yeah, I think those conversations will continue to happen.
Other board members, questions or comments?
All right, thank you.
My last comment for your part, just want to thank everybody again for Teacher Appreciation Week and all the educators and the entire educational system that makes our schools a success, and just one more recognition of those amazing science and math educators and Milken Award winners. We're just so fortunate to have so many talented people in this state. Thank you.
With that, any additional questions or comments by board members? Okay, we will adjourn, but we will be in touch with you all about upcoming steps for next meeting.
Yeah, it'll be in Blytheville.
Will it be a special meeting or our regular special?